Hey guys, welcome to episode 1 of the Dine Sports YouTube and Podcast Network. My name is Kyle Skinner and I'm the president and founder of Dine Sports Management. The aim of this series is to try and tap into what makes high-level athletes, coaches, those in the sports business industry, entrepreneurs, and those who are really making an impact in their communities tick. Unpacking some of the tips and tricks that have gotten them to this point in their career as well, and seeing if there's anything that's universally applicable that you could apply to your life as well after listening. Today's guest, we're honored to have him, is Merrick Palmer of Capitol Courts. He is a journeyman basketball player who has been there, done that, seen a little bit of everything as far as his journey, beginning first as an athlete, moving into a professional basketball role, trainer, and now founder of Capitol Courts Academy here in Ottawa, Ontario. We're going to be unpacking quite a bit from him, but just a quick overview of Merrick's journey. He's a native of Scarborough, Ontario, where he was ultimately recruited to attend St. Francis Xavier University on a basketball scholarship to play on the East Coast under Coach K. While he was there, he was able to win a national championship and earn several accolades and honors along the way. This then paved the way for him to be able to be recruited to play professionally overseas, where he ended up playing in the South African Premier Basketball League, also winning a league championship while he was over there. Upon returning home to Canada to start his family, he founded the Merrick Palmer Basketball School, where he began working at the grassroots level in basketball to try and begin training players and making an impact from the youngest ages of athletes. From there, he went on to found the Capitol Courts Training Center, where he furthered his training experience and continued to grow his client list, and ultimately went on to found the Capitol Courts Academy, which is a academy program here in Ottawa, Ontario, catering to some of the highest level female basketball players in the region. So there's going to be a lot to unpack here. We cover everything from athletics to business to life to the state of the landscape of Canadian basketball right now and more. So really hope you guys enjoy this. Without further ado, Merrick Palmer. Hey guys, thanks for joining us again for another episode of the Dine Sports podcast and YouTube page. Joining me today is the multi-talented Merrick Palmer of Capitol Courts. Merrick, how are you doing, sir?
I'm really good, man. How are you?
Oh, we're doing good over here. Everyone's healthy in your neck of the woods, staying busy with the COVID lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just trying to stay safe and avoid the COVID.
Yeah. No, we're definitely in unprecedented times for sure. But what I think is, as we were just mentioning, a bit of an unintended consequence of this is everything slowed down. Right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Some of these things that have been on the back burner for a while, we're able to sort of pay attention to. And, this has been something that I've been looking forward to doing for a while now. And you actually beat me to the punch, and you had me on your podcast there, and it was a great time. And I figured, you know what, I got to get Merrick on here when we do finally launch this. So
absolutely. No, that's cool. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. So you've really done it all in terms of the athletics, the business side of things. You can really speak to a lot of different avenues. So, let's hop right into it here. Let's maybe start with the player side of things. So you won a national championship out at St. FX in the youth sports system there. How did that all sort of come together? How did you make the decision that, you know what, this is the right fit for me in terms of school and culture, and what sort of sold you on that process?
Well, I was in grade 13 back then. Grade 13 was a thing. It wasn't voluntary like it is now. It was actually mandatory if you wanted to go to university. So I did my grade 13, and so I was pretty much a late bloomer in terms of basketball. So in my grade 13 year, I started to blossom a little bit, and I started to get some recognition across Canada. So a lot of universities in Canada was recruiting me, and so I didn't make a decision yet. So it was around April. There was some all-star games happening in Toronto, and I happened to make one of the all-star teams. There's two all-star teams, one that plays the Americans and one that played regionally. So I made the regional all-star team, and in the stands were a bunch of coaches. Some I haven't spoken to yet, but some and some that knew me obviously. And so after the game, I had a good game. I was MVP of that game, and heading into the locker room, there's a bunch of coaches that were kind of, hey, when you come out, let's talk. I'm like, no problem. So just about to head into the actual locker room, and then Coach K said, hey, come see me first when you come out. And that's Steve Konchowski, the legendary Hall of Fame coach. So got in there, changed, didn't really think anything of it. Just, did my thing, came out, and he just literally just, hey, grabbed my arm and pulled and whisked me out of the building. So all the other coaches were kind of looking around, but he just, like ninja style, like extracted me out of the building, out of the school, and just plopped me in his car, in the front seat of his car, and was just recruiting me right there. So he's like, hey, my name is Steve Konchowski, and I'm the head coach of St. Francis Xavier, blah, 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 blah. And he had a pamphlet ready to go. He had a VHS tape with St. FX, basketball on it. And I'm like, man, this guy is like aggressive. And so he said, I just wanted to isolate you and just talk to you before, head back in. And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. And so he kept me there for like half an hour, just telling me about the school. And I'm like, okay, all right, I gotta go back in there. He says, okay, so, can I come to your school tomorrow and meet your coach and meet your teachers? And I'm like, oh, this guy wants to meet my teachers. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So I said, for sure, and so the next day he came to Lester B. Pearson in Scarborough, Ontario, and met my coach and went to my, some of my teachers and met the principal of the school. And it was like a big thing. This guy is well known. And then he said, what time you finish school? I said, I'll finish at 3:15. He says, I'll be back, and I'll take you for dinner. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. He took me for dinner, fancy restaurant, wine and dine. I'm like, wow. He says, order anything you want. It's like, oh my God, this is pretty. So after dinner, he says, you know what? I'll take you home and I can meet your mom. Took me home, met my mom, sat me down, talked to us about the school again. This guy, I was like, was he here for me, or because prior to that, I had no contact with this person.
Yeah. So
it was actually pretty amazing that this guy was so aggressive, but yet wasn't really pushy, because he was just like, you have any questions? You ever heard of St. FX? And it was also fast, but I just felt very comfortable with him, because I knew it felt like he wasn't trying to sell me on anything. It wasn't trying to con me. And he answered every single question that I had. He answered every single question my mom had. And he said, just, watch the video. And it was like a promo video about the school and then about the basketball program. And there was no internet back then. So it was like, there was no IG, no nothing. So he said, just get me your transcript and we'll see what happens. So next day I went to my school and got my transcript and faxed it off to, it was fax then. You had to fax it off to him. He brought it to the admissions office within a week. He called me and said, you're in.
Wow.
And that was it. So I didn't visit the school, nothing. There was nothing, no virtual tour, nothing.
Wow.
I just kind of felt his, that he was genuine. And I said, you know what? All the other schools, it was funny because I didn't even call any other school. I was just like, okay, because you have to call them and say I'm committed to this. Back then it was just like, all right, I'm in. You got my transcript. I'm good. And so all the other coaches started calling and said, hey, I said, oh yeah, by the way, I committed to St. FX. And that's how it went down.
Wow. So it was essentially his passion for the program was what
Absolutely
ended up sealing the deal for you then.
Absolutely. And, by the time I got there, it was like, I don't care what this place looks like, just getting off the plane. And I thought, the school's going to be nearby, 2 hours, just trees. And I was like, what the heck? So by the time we pulled into to Antigonish, I'm like, man, there's nothing here. It's just a university and some houses.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, show me the gym. I only want to see the gym. I just want to see the gym. And he says, oh, you have full access to the gym to get, I'm like, music to my ears. Show me where I'm staying. Let's get busy. And I worked the basketball camp for 2 weeks. And then that kind of gave me some, got me acclimated to the school and to the people. And the rest was history. First year national champions. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere.
Cinderella story right there.
Yeah.
Unreal. Well, I mean, other than the fact that you were using fax machines and VHSs to do the recruiting process there, like looking back on your recruiting journey, what would you say are some of the biggest differences between how you were recruited back then versus how kids are being recruited today?
Right. So I wasn't that big name like 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 a Rowan Barrett, for let's say,
Mm-hmm.
RJ Barrett's dad. So Rowan Barrett was our counterpart. He was at the school in Scarborough at West Hill. So he was like an exciting player. So he had all these Division One offers. So I think the Division One offers back then are very similar, to the recruiting process today. So I'm pretty sure he had to pick, choose, and refuse what school to go to. And they flew him out. He probably visited and stuff. So, but it wasn't like that with me because I wasn't at that level. I was more on a smaller level. So it was kind of, I got recruited by Ottawa U. So Ottawa U came and took me out, and so it wasn't the same. So I didn't have that good, that feeling that I was looking for. So it was kind of easy, and that kind of. So I think in terms of difference, it's almost it's probably the same. There's just more technology that you can do virtual tours like kids are doing right now. But I think at the end of the day, recruiting is the same because it's about approaching kids. If you're university staff, approaching kids, building relationships, and building trust, and making sure that they know what they're getting into. So there were shady people back then. I'm pretty sure there's shady people now. So I wouldn't say there's much difference. It's all about figuring out what works for you, what your goals are. Is your goal to start? Is your goal to improve? Is your goal to get a degree? It's all about, it's very personal, I think recruiting is. And, we're going to talk more about the prep school, but I think when we approach a family, I don't really call it recruiting. I call it building relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that way there's no kind of negative connotation. It's not about conning or coercing. It's all about building relationship, because if things go sideways, you still have a relationship, with the family or with the child. Even if they transfer out of your program, you still have a relationship. But if it was just straight recruiting, because I need you to get on my program so I can win games, then it's pretty easy to just cut them, recruit over them, don't talk to the parents, and, no parents allowed. And so I'm more about building relationships. And I still had that as a kid being recruited, that I wanted to be around someone that I can trust. And Coach K had that, and in droves. So, he's still coaching to this day, and he's going to retire next year, but obviously he's doing something right where people still want to go and play for him.
Absolutely, and at the end of the day, you hit the nail right on the head there. As far as it's relationships, right? That's what's going to, form those bonds beyond the court as well there, and make sure that the parents are comfortable with sending their son or daughter off to whatever program it is. But
Absolutely.
especially in your case, where you're moving from Ontario all the way out to the East Coast here, right? There were probably quite a few adjustments that you had to make.
Oh yeah.
And having that solid relationship with the coach already probably helped out quite a bit. But maybe even looking back, like playing devil's advocate here, what are some of the things that kids might be overlooking when they are trying to make that transition from high school ball to freshman university there? What are some things that you think might be able to make that transition a little bit smoother for them, that might not jump to their front of their minds right away?
Yeah, I think it's just, especially if kids go away for school, homesickness is a real thing. It's a absolute real thing. I was like, I'm from the hood, and I'm like, I got this. Show me where the gym is at. I'm ready. And then after, like, because I was there for the St. FX basketball camp for kids, and so we worked 2 weeks of that, and then there was a week before school started, and so I, you know, my daily routine was wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, shoot, lift, run, shoot, lift, run. Like that was, but after I got home after shooting and lifting and running, I'm like bored out of my mind. I'm like, okay, this is tough. When school started, it helped out a little bit. And then, you know, it's your alone time where you're like, man, I actually miss my friends. I miss my parents. I miss my brothers and sisters. It's a real thing. After all the novelty wears off, and then you're in a routine, then you start thinking about, okay, what's my brother doing? Or what's my mom doing? And back then it wasn't, communication was, in 1992, there was not, it was internet was just coming out. You had dial-up connection and all these different things. So we couldn't do something like this. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of kids overlook or are not prepared for that loneliness that you will feel for, after a while, and then that hits them really hard, and then they start going sideways or getting into certain things that they shouldn't be getting into to fill the void.
Mhm.
So I found that was kind of the biggest adjustment to leaving home. I mean, some kids play locally, and that's also good. So they might experience different things, maybe the academics, but I find if you have good academic skills in terms of time management, you will succeed. I find that also time management is a huge one for kids that are finally on their own, and your parents are not, you know, breathing down your back, and you got a lot of free time. You can go to the clubs, you can do anything you want, you can party, drink, do all these crazy things you couldn't do at home, and now no one's there to tell you not to do it. So a lot of kids are not prepared for all that freedom. So I would say time management, freedom, loneliness are all real things that kids sometimes overlook,
Mhm.
because the sports is so big, and everyone wants you and whatever it is. But being in isolation, away from people, the freedom gets people, and the time management, whoa, like that can hit you really hard. So kids have to really think about what kind of student they are and if they're self-motivated, because sometimes profs don't care if you're in class or not. They just whatever, they got your money,
Yeah.
and they don't really care. So, but I found what was good about me in at St. FX was it's a small school, and the class sizes are small. So the teachers actually took attendance,
Yeah.
and which was like, okay, you know, here, and so they get to know who you are. You're not just 922-616. Like that was my student number, and it's just you want to make sure that you're not just a number, but it worked out for me, and that's why I chose a small university, because you don't want to get lost in the shuffle. But yeah, I would say time management, loneliness, and what was the last one I said? Time management, loneliness, and freedom. So
Yeah.
those three things right there, some kids are not prepared for, but so you got to take that in consideration when choosing a school.
For sure. And you know what? You hit on some really great points there too. And, it gets me thinking as well. You hear the term helicopter parent thrown around quite a bit these days now. Do you think there's, some truth behind that? Are kids maybe, coddled a little bit more nowadays versus a generation ago? Or do you think that people are just sort of painting with broad strokes there, and, some kids are just getting lumped into that category maybe unfairly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both, and it's pretty individualized. I wouldn't say everyone is, helicopter parents, or we're in a culture of helicopter parents. Like, helicopter parents has been around a long time. It's just there's a term for it.
Yeah.
But And now I find parents are just more aware of all the different things pulling at their children. So a concerned parent is a concerned parent. You know what I mean? So, you know, if if you cross the line, you know what I mean, then you become a helicopter. Like, you know, you're following the kid around and you're not giving them a chance to grow themselves. So my main thing in terms of between what happened back then and what's happening now is I think there's just more variables or more things that the kids can get into now. Before it was just okay, they might smoke something or drink something, and but now there's
end up
so many.
all over the internet like it would
Well,
now, right? So
the internet, the wild west, right? So I have to I have to make sure that my daughter's, you know, safe and sound on social media. Like I want to make sure I'm checking her stuff, but you give your, you know, I give her enough leeway to make sure that she understands that you have some freedoms, but you know, you gotta safeguard some things, right? You know what I mean? So you're a new parent, you know, you know, young father, so to speak. So you don't want to be holding his hands and trying to, you know, teach him how to walk for until he's two. He's gonna have to. You're gonna let go, right? So it's same thing. You're gonna have to let them go, and then see how they fare. But my job as a parent is to make sure that I'm preparing that kid good enough so they can leave the nest, like we spoke earlier. But a lot of parents sometimes don't want that. You know, they don't want the kid to ever leave, or they want to be dependent on, so they will helicopter. So I think it's more individualized. I wouldn't say all parents are helicopter parents, or we're in a culture of helicopter parents. It's just there's a lot of distractions, and some parents, you know what I mean, they want to hover and they want to make sure that all is well, and I find that stunts the growth of children, and sometimes they're not prepared, and when they reach and they have experienced adversity, and mom or dad is not around, they're in big trouble. So you want to create some rope where there is some independence of free thought, and if you've done your job as a parent, you should rest assured that they're going to make a good decision, you know, and if they don't, you're there to help them, but you're not hovering so they don't make a mistake. You know, you don't want to bubble wrap your child to protect them. You know, they're going to have to fall, they're going to take a bruise, and they're going to learn not to fall no more, right? But you have to let them fall down a little bit. So you know, all in all, I think it's more individualized, but in today's society there's more susceptibility to, you know, for kids to go down the wrong path just because of, you know, social media.
no, for sure. And luckily, you know, I'm still at the stage where the only things I have to worry about are, you know, the bumps and bruises and fall downs and scrapes, and that we're still a few
Yeah,
years away from even having to worry about giving them cell phones or anything in my household. But it's coming. It's coming.
absolutely. Yeah, it's coming. It's
Yeah.
coming.
So flashing back now to Saint FX. So once you did wrap up your playing career there, so you graduate, you then went on to play professionally overseas as well too. So just sort of walk us through what that process was like. Coming out of university, were you being approached by clubs? Were you sending out your tapes to people trying to find a spot for yourself? You know, was it a little bit of both?
So my university career, I would say was pretty good. I had a couple. Well, there's some couple all-star selections, um, and then but we didn't end up winning any more championships there. But it was okay. I had one under the belt, and so my last year was my best year. So I was, but in the meantime, I had no connections with agents. I had no connections. The only connection I had was Coach K again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a situation where he was a national team coach.
Mm-hmm.
So he worked with a lot of professionals on the national team. Some were playing overseas already. So he had to communicate with a lot of the agents of those players. So there was agents approaching him about potential professional players that he knew. So that's how my name came up. And so he put me in touch with an agent that was inquiring about players to place. So that's how it all, evolved. And but in the meantime, for me, something that I always try to promote to other people and to kids is, write your goals down and make sure you have access to those goals visually, see them, visualize. And so what I did was, in my dorm room, I cut out like a piece of paper, and I wrote like pro ball on it up right across, and stuck it on my dorm room window, like on my what is it called, like a cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote that in, and every time I brushed my teeth in the morning, whatever, I had to look around it. It was so big because I wanted to be in my face. I didn't want it to be in a book somewhere or in my journal. Like, I want to play pro ball one day. I wanted to see my goal every single day. So I wrote it on my vanity window and my glass, and then every day I woke up and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do to achieve this goal that I wrote down for myself? Got to eat right. You got to sleep right. You got to, so I was pretty disciplined in university, especially during my last year. And so in terms of what you said, did I send out any tapes or anything? I was building, I recorded, well, all the tapes all the games were recorded at university. So I asked Coach K can I borrow the tapes? He said, make sure you could bring them back, because that's what he used for recruiting and stuff like that. So, or for scouting.
Mm-hmm.
So I took them, I got 2 VCRs, one blank, and got the cables, then press play, press record, pause. Like, that's how I edited my own video. So I had that, and I had a finished copy of a video of my highlight reel, and I just had that in my pocket. But I had no contacts. And so, just a long story short, my last year was my best year on paper. Led the team in steals, uh, 3-point percentage, scoring, a lot of categories except like the rebounding and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So during the athletic banquet, I didn't get the MVP award. So I was pretty crushed.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was, I wasn't a good captain. I knew I wasn't a good captain. Why? Because I was hyper focused on my goal. I was super focused, and I was just put my headphones on, and I just literally just went to games. And even though they designated me a captain, I wasn't a very good captain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of ostracized the rest of the team. When I saw that they were dogging it, I'm like, you guys are just not, pulling your weight. And I wasn't nice about it because I just didn't know how to be a leader. I was just really focusing on me. And that was kind of what contributed to the fact that I wasn't a good leader, and they gave the MVP to someone who came off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And that hurt. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This program sucks. I can't believe I wasted my time here. But it was just anger, right? So went home into my dorm room, just, took my stuff off, put my basketball gear on, went downstairs in the foyer, and started handling the ball. I could just get my frustrations out. And this was like, I don't know, at midnight. And I was just hooping, and quiet hours start, as you know, in university, there's quiet hours in dorms.
Yeah.
Campus police show up, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, ah. They're like, you gotta stop. I'm like, I'm not stopping. You better arrest me, because I'm not stopping. So they didn't arrest me. They let me vent a little bit. And then, because I was blaming coach. I'm like, I hate coach and blah blah blah. It's a waste of time. And so when I got a call in my dorm room, it was an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, how you doing? And they say, I'm so and so. I represent, this is my agency. And Coach K says that you have potential to play overseas. And I'm like, what? Coach K said that? And I'm like, I want to go and stab this guy, and he's recommended you to me. So I was just like, and he said, I have a couple places for you. I have a couple places. Can you send me your tape? You have a highlight tape? And I'm like, oh, funny you asked. I already had one. So mailed it. Went to the mail office on campus. Mailed it off to him. He saw it, liked it, sent it to a couple teams. One of them was in Portugal. Another one was in South Africa, and both of them wanted me. So I had a choice, so I didn't know what to choose because the agent called me back and said, yeah, both teams want you. Which one would you like? And so I'm like, I have no idea. So I went to Coach K, with the tail between my legs and like, hey, coach, hi, can we talk? And we spoke, and he just basically just gave me a talking to, like, America, you want to be a good leader. You don't want to be just all for yourself, and you can't put your expectations onto people. You were just, hyper focused on you, which is good, but if you're a team leader, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, good. He says, Merrick, it's all about people. It's all about people. And that stuck with me. And, but in the meantime, I said, what do you think about Portugal? What do you think about South Africa? He said, I know in Portugal, they don't always get their money on time. It's kind of dodgy. But he had no idea about South Africa. So I said, you know what? I always want to go back to the motherland, so let's do it. So that's how I chose South Africa. I wrote my last exam on, let's say, the Friday, flew to Ottawa, saw my girlfriend, took a bus the next day to Toronto, got my passport in order. The next day, I was on a plane to South Africa.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So you know what, like the two big things that I take away from that story, and I want you to say it louder for the kids in the back here, because it's what I've been preaching to the athletes that I work with all the time, is it's relationships. And you don't know what people are doing for you behind the scenes and all of that. So be very, very thankful for the relationships you have, and take care of the people in your circle.
Absolutely.
The second one is visualization. So can you maybe just expand on those two sort of concepts a little bit, and just hammer home that it's not just, the redhead preaching to them that these two things are important, that they do actually make an impact in the lives of, they're important for your future.
Absolutely. And what changed my whole outlook on visualization and all those things was another story, since we're talking about it. When I was working in Toronto, Coach K got me a job in Toronto for the Canada Post, making good money.
Relationships again.
Again, relationships. And on my way home from my job, a street person approached me and said, hey, you got any money? I'm like, and I know I had money, right? So I didn't want to, like, no. But I didn't have any change. I only had bills. And so I had a $20 bill. So I gave him a $20 bill. And he's like, thank you so much. I got to give you something in return. I'm like, no. I'm good. You don't need to give me anything. He goes, no. I want to give you a book. I'm like, a book? He goes, yeah, I used to be a professor back in my country, but I fell on hard times and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. So he gave me a book, and it said, it's a book on meditation. And I was like, okay, this is cool, interesting. It's all ratty and everything. But I took it, put it in my bag, and walked up to Bloor Street and jumped on the train and took the train home. And so I started reading it on the train, and it was a book on meditation, breath control, visualization, all these different things. So I was entering into my third year of university. The first 2 years, I was averaging 6 points per game. So I was killing it. Not quite. So I needed a change, and I needed to make sure, I needed to address things that I wasn't really aware of, because I find I was always hyped up, and I was always anxious and ready to, like, warm-ups. I would just tear the rim off and just, and look at me, and, girls in the crowd. And it was just, I wasn't focused, because I wanted to impress everyone. I was living kind of outside in instead of inside out. Mm-hmm. So the book, I read it, and it actually went through some steps of how to calm yourself down and how to visualize. And, and one of the exercises was laying down, get your heart rate down to like 0, and if anything negative pops through your mind, you treat it like a cloud of negativity, but the cloud is always moving, and it just kind of floats by. And so that takes practice. So that whole summer, that's all I did was just lay down and just practice breathing, counting your breath, and seeing negativity flow by. And then with me, I said, okay, I want to add this visualization piece to it, where I want to visualize what I'm going to do for the game. And so I saw myself on offense. I saw myself on defense. I saw myself reacting to adversity. I just kept on visualizing and playing the game in my head in different scenarios while being super calm. So I was able to really get my brain onto another level. So the first game that I did that, I had 26 points. And I was like, whoa, yeah. I'm like, okay, this is working. This works. And from then I adopted it to my game. And I just every game, and those, my teammates can attest to it, they would just see me go off and find a quiet spot, and I'll lay on my back and just breathe and do my visualization and my breathing and all these different things. And that whole year I ended up averaging 18 points a game, and my assists went up, everything went up. So visualizing, having a goal, you have to see it to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't see it, you can't believe it, and then it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of, so I'm a huge proponent of, of visualization, forming your ideas, forming your goals, seeing it as a physical thing in front of you, whether it's a piece of paper or a note or a sign or a journal or whatever it is, seeing it and it's in your face every day. You get to really start to believe in what you're doing, and boom, you're going to be there in no time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's so much truth in that. And, for any of the kids that are out there listening to that, take note of that. If you take anything away from this entire process there, it's visualization, whether it's,
Absolutely.
like you were doing, put a note on your mirror, write down your goals, have it somewhere where you can see it, not just stuffed in a shoebox underneath your bed.
No. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, we hear it all the time too, right? Kids have exceptionally lofty goals, and it's always good to aim for the peak of the summit there. But in a lot of kids' minds, I find, especially in basketball circles, it's NBA or bust. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
But there's just so many kids out there that are vying for so few spots that the math is never going to work out, right? So for the kids who might have that elite level talent and are leading their university team in scoring and all that stuff, and do have an avenue to a professional career beyond university ball there, but they might be sort of below that NBA level there. What sort of advice would you give to them about continuing their basketball journey, whether it is overseas or in a local Canadian league like the CEBL that's been formed?
Sure.
What sort of advice would you give to that sort of player?
My advice to that type of player that's not quite the NBA level, and even, I mean, I think even if someone has the NBA potential and does get to the NBA, my advice to them, not that they need my advice, but I'm going to give it anyway, is prepare yourself for life after basketball. And because the CBL, whatever minor league, G League, it's not going to be there forever. You will not be able to play basketball forever. So maybe if you're lucky, you're going to play till you're 36. If you're lucky and, barring any injury, you're going to play till around 36. After 36, what are you going to do? And that's where a lot of people, they get stuck. And if you're not fortunate to play that long, you have to prepare for life after that point. And because if you're just, I call it a hoop head, you're just a hoop head and you're just all things hoop. I'm going to chase the next contract. You're going to play in 10, 13 different countries in your career. And you come back and you have a little bit of money in your pocket because you were wise with your money. What are you going to do? So my thing would be is, if you are overseas and you're kind of bouncing around between team and, chasing that next contract, start thinking about what you want to do eventually. And while you're back home during the summers, don't just work on your game, work on your networks. And because you may not, if you're gonna settle, let's say in Ottawa, you're from Ottawa, you're playing overseas. If you know you're gonna settle and eventually live in Ottawa, start building your networks prior to your calling it quits. Because I find what happens is you chase the contract, you come back in the summer, work on your game, get the next contract, come back, work on your game, and you're not really making those connections for when the ball stops bouncing, whether it is just old age or unfortunate situation where you get injured. So you want to make sure that you are preparing yourself. And for example, I come back in the summertime and I'm hitting up the principal of my old high school because I want to maybe go into teachers college, or I want to coach at that school, and maybe use that experience to start my own basketball company, or start my own consulting business or whatever. So you always, in your spare time, because believe it or not, you have spare time even overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I did when I was overseas. I was already writing my business plan. So especially during my last year when I was in Cape Town, 2 years in Durban, 1 year in Cape Town. When I was in Cape Town, that's when I started to write my business plan. And so by the time I came home, my business plan was already written. I did a couple of drafts, and so when I came back, I got a job with the police. So I was working with the police, but I knew that wasn't going to be my dream job. I was still perfecting my business plan. So that's kind of that would be my advice for the people who are still, chasing the next dream, because it's really hard to tell a person who's in that mode, that hoop head mode, anything else, like, because they're so locked in. And I've been there. I was locked in myself, and I only started to realize when I saw that, I don't know if I can do this forever. You know what I mean? My body was still good. Like, I felt strong, but that's when you should be preparing, when you're strong, not when your career ends all of a sudden, and now you're in withdrawal and you can't think straight. And now hey, I'm looking for a job because I'm trying to make ends meet, because you didn't think about it. You didn't plan. And when you don't plan, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I think that's what would be my main advice for guys who have that potential, but not quite NBA, is while you're chasing those minor league contracts, and they are minor league, and there's not major money, it's minor money too. Try to save as much as you can. Put some stuff away if you can. If not, build your connections. Really build your connections. When you're here, just volunteer, or do your thing and gain experience. That's one thing I also tell kids: if you want to run your own company, work for a company and ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask the director, how do you run this company? Ask the supervisor, how things work. You can work at McDonald's if you want to eventually own a McDonald's franchise. Talk to the supervisor. How does this work? How does this all get set up? And just pull from the people around you. You never, and some people will be like, wow, like you're 25 years old and you're asking about franchises. That's pretty cool. Or you're 19, 20 years old and you're asking how things work. That's pretty cool. And some people will be very receptive because they want to teach too. Some people they want to teach. So that would be my main thing: is prepare, build your network, start planning. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be an entrepreneur, start planning, find out what business that you like and where you see yourself in a couple of years or a few years, and build your networks, because that, it's priceless. And again, it always goes back down to relationships, right?
Yeah.
Build your relationships with people, because once that ball stops bouncing, because
You gotta have a plan.
You gotta have a plan. You gotta have a plan.
Yeah,
So.
and it's such good advice too, right? It's just be a sponge, right? Regardless of what atmosphere you're in. Ask the question, form those relationships, and you never know where a simple conversation will take you.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So once your playing career was over, you've now made sort of your business plan. Was the plan always to get into skills training and coaching and that sort of thing, or did that sort of just come about organically through fate or happenstance or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. So the initial business plan that I was writing was a salon, a
Okay.
hair salon. Yeah, a hair salon for my wife or my girlfriend then,
Yeah.
right? She was a hairstylist, and I was like, you know what? I want to do this business plan, and because she was already working for a salon, and she also wanted to be an owner of a business, and so I started writing this business plan, and it had drawings and everything. It was really cool, pretty kind of bootleg. It was just really crude drawings, but I was pumped up, right? So I started writing that business plan, and then and in the meantime, I was working for the police and saving my money, and then and then my girlfriend, then she got pregnant, so that's what kind of cut my career short. So my son was born in 1998, and that was my last season. And again, I had another opportunity to go to France and play basketball there. There was a contract waiting for me, but then you know, my wife was giving birth, and I was supposed to be back for the birth, and things happened where they couldn't change my plane ticket because my son came early.
Yeah.
And that hit me hard, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. There's no way, I could never live, forgive myself for missing that birth, and it wasn't really my fault, but the fact that I was stuck in South Africa and I couldn't get home to witness the birth of my son was tough. And so I said, I got to get something close to the house. I got to get something closer. And there was no CBL, there was no NBL then. It was nothing. So that's what kind of cut my career short. But once I started to, and I was working in Toronto, then I eventually moved to Ottawa, and I shifted directions in terms of the business plan. So I started writing another business plan, and it was a restaurant. And so I actually found a place on Dalhousie Street. It was like everything was perfect, and then they had some bylaws that I didn't account for. It was actually a new bylaw that I didn't know about. It was, in lieu of parking, where you have to give the city, money up front in lieu of parking because you couldn't provide parking on your premises. So it's just the way the city, generated money, and that hit me hard. So I had this money, and I'm like, you know what, talk to my girlfriend. Then I said, you know what, let's shift it back to the salon. And so, but I had already given my job notice. I already gave the police notice that I'm quitting on this day, and I'm taking this, and I'm gonna move and open up my restaurant. And so once I got that news, of the in lieu of parking bylaw, I just took the funds that I saved up, and we went right, full force to the salon. And so we started a salon. But now I'm in Ottawa with no job, right? Because I was going to work in the restaurant. So, anyways, I ended up working, trying to find jobs. So I ended up at the YMCA because I still had my degree in psychology, but I was a basketball player. So I want to know psychology. I want to be around basketball and kids. And so I started running like a youth program, mentor program every Monday night. I would have kids for 2 hours, 1 hour with just talking to them about school and life skills basically. And then the next hour would be in the gym, and 2-on-2, 3-on-3, and giving them some skills and some direction. And my son started playing basketball at age 7, and I coached his house league team, GCBA. And then we ended up, with the worst team in the league because I didn't pick my own team. They're like, you're not allowed to pick your team because you're a pro you're a pro baller. So I'm like, just pick my team, just give me my son. And so they gave me a motley crew, and it was pretty rough. And we lost every game from October to December. We pretty much lost every game. But the way I was coaching the kids, they didn't even know if they're winning or losing. They didn't know because I was so energetic. I'm like, let's go! Make one good pass. I'm running down the sideline. Let's go! So I think the parents on the other side in the stands, were like, wow, this guy is super energetic. He's passionate. So after like, a few games, even though we're getting murdered, there was parents that wanted to transfer on to our chat. So, sorry, my battery's running low. I'm just gonna plug it in. So they saw that I was super passionate, and they said, why don't you, do you have anything on the go? Or do you train people, or do you coach other kids? And I said, nah, I'm good. Like I just want to be around my son and at home, and I don't want more basketball in my life. I had enough. And so they said, no, you're really good. You should do something else. So I'm like, okay, maybe, I'll look into it. So I didn't look into it. And then the following year, the same thing. Had my son, training him. He's getting better now. The kids on my team were improving, and we're winning every game. And parents at the end of that season said, you know what, we're not taking no for an answer this time. You got to do something. So I said, okay, I'll look into it. I'll really look into it. So then I contacted the city of Ottawa, and I said, how much does it cost to rent a gym for 2 hours on the weekends? And they told me the number, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to maybe run a 12-week program every Sunday. And so I booked a little school up in Orleans, and, a little elementary school, and I got 7 kids. And I'm like, all right. And like 4 were family members, you know what I mean? So it was pretty rough. There was no real social media savvy. This was in 2007 or 8, or I was taping up flyers on poles, and, former professional basketball player, Merrick Palmer basketball school, blah, 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 blah. Come, here's a cost for 12 weeks. And then after that 12-week session, there are kids in that program that wanted more. Can we do more? So I said, okay. So I booked a summer program, and they were able to give me 3 days a week. So I shortened up the 12 weeks into like, I don't know, 6 or something, or 4 weeks. And I just volume. That time I had 14 kids. I doubled up. And then the following spring, did it again, had 30 kids. And I just kept on doubling until we got to like 200 kids. So I had 3 schools. I was running from this school to that school, and I'm like, this is madness. And so that's kind of how I got into training, because just by training my son and people seeing how enthusiastic I was about coaching and training. And so that's how I got into actually training basketball. But it wasn't the plan. It was just kind of something that evolved organically. But I did remember when I was in South Africa, I was doing clinics for the team, and that was part of my contract. And I found myself gravitating towards, helping and training and coaching kids. And I'm like, you know what? I like this, But once I, got back home, life starts to happen. My kid, forgot about basketball. Basketball was like secondary. But that's kind of how I fell into basketball. But I kind of remembered, this is why, I felt good in Africa training, and now that, all the, things have kind of calmed down. I started coaching my son. It started to come back. I'm like, yes, this did make me feel good, so I'm going to stick with it. And that's how I evolved into training.
Well, there you go, right? Like that's why it's so important to be flexible and be able to pivot and, go follow your passions. Because going from hair salon to restaurant, the little whole, 4 kids coming out for training to where you are now, right?
Yeah,
It's
and we still have the salon. We opened the salon. We still have it right now.
there you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
my wife's still running a salon. It's still hers. It's still her baby.
Unbelievable. So, I mean, let's fast forward even a couple years from there now. You've got a couple years under your belt of training. I think it's pretty fair to say you've got a fairly unique philosophy on player development, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where some programs are just, let's churn as many kids through here as possible, maximize revenues, we only focus on the court stuff, skills. You're more so, your approach, what I have seen at least, is you're more interested in a holistic approach, right? You want to develop, yes, very solid players, but solid people as well too, both on and off the court. Where did this sort of philosophy come from?
I think because, when I was in university, my major was psychology and sociology. And I was always intrigued about the mind. And ever since that guy slipped me that book, that street person slipped me that book, I was always fascinated about how powerful the mind can be. And so I kept that close to my heart, always conscious of my emotions and how it relates to society. And so I was always in tune with how people are perceived. And, being, a Black man myself, I'm always conscious of my surroundings and making sure, and growing up in Lawrence Heights area, in the jungle, so to speak, growing up in those environments made me very aware of who I am and how I'm perceived. And so when when I started training kids in a one-on-one setting, I've realized that these kids are all unique and people are all unique, So instead of just focusing on one aspect of their life, which is why they come through the door, I can give much more than that. And I think, and again, we go back to building that relationship. If I have a good relationship with that child, I know I can get more out of that child. So if I'm just saying, go left, jump higher, do this, it's almost like a job when they come here. And I'm like, oh my God, Merrick's gonna yell at me again. But when they come in, they step on the floor, I'm like, hey, what's up, man? How you feeling? How's school? Did you bully anyone today? And, no, I don't bully anyone. And so you kind of like, you get into who they are as beings. And every kid is different, and once you can understand kids and people, I think you can really impact their lives in more ways than just basketball. Because I know, again, as we discussed earlier, the ball will stop eventually, and you want to make sure that you impact them in more ways than just basketball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you have a son, you're going to bring them to a program. And if it's only about the actual thing that you're going there for, like the gymnastics or whatever it is, and the coach is just like just focused on gymnastics, doesn't care who you are or who your son is, you're like, he doesn't care. He's just a slave driver. He just like wants the money. But if you show your clientele that you care, I mean, you're building that relationship, you're building that trust. And I wanted to make sure if I ever started a program outside of training, just one-on-one, I want to have the mechanisms and the resources to impact their lives from different angles. Because I know basketball or sports is just only one angle.
Mm-hmm.
It's only one angle. You learn a lot in a team setting and hard work and all, but there's kids who have issues and deficiencies in their personality or shortcomings or where they're coming from, and you want to provide options to help them. Because if I know that my coach is really concerned about who I am as a person, I'm going to give more on the court. Mm-hmm. If I know he just cares about my jump shot and nothing else, and if my jump shot is off, he can't help me anymore. I'm not going to approach him because he's only wants to talk basketball. But if a player can talk to you more than just sports, you're now a friend, you're now a mentor, you're now a father figure, you're now so much more than just a coach. And in today's society, we have to wear more than one hat. So I didn't want to just be a singular type of one trick pony. I wanted to be that coach that can provide a bit more in terms of what they might be lacking, or if they need some advice, I'll talk to them. So I'm in my office, and this office gets really used. You know what I mean? It gets used for more than just business. It gets used. I got a Kleenex box. A lot of kids shed a lot of tears in here, and it's a safe place. But if I was just worried about that kid's crossover, I might lose that kid.
For sure. And there you go. It's coming full circle again, right back to relationships and, building that trust, and, you can impact kids far more profoundly when that level of trust is established. Right. And
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Keep it up for sure. And so I think that is probably, you know, what led to sort of the next phase of your career. There is you're now doing the training, that's going really well. Those relationships keep building, 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 building. You're probably hearing it from some other outside sources like, hey, you start your own program, start this, right? So that then leads to the founding of CCA, so Capital Courts Academy there. So for those that might be listening that might not know the difference between, you know, a traditional high school team versus like a prep program there, can you just give us a real quick rundown, like what sort of separates the two?
Yeah, so an academy, like a sports academy, they will play in a separate league. They wouldn't play a regular high school in the same high school league because kids come from all walks of life. They come from different boundaries, so they congregate into one school. So it will be unfair for those kids, elite kids, to play against regular high school kids that play multi sports, and they're just there just trying to involve themselves. It's not fair. So if you're in an academy setting, you playing in a specialized league or an elite league with other academies that are elite and with elite athletes. So we are housed. Capital Courts Academy is housed in a regular high school. That high school hosts us, and they don't really have they have oversight of our program, but we're controlling how the kids are coming to it from school. We're controlling a lot more than if they just went to high school. So the thing that separates an academy from a regular high school is the academy team plays in a different league. And the league that we play in is Ontario Scholastic Basketball Association. And a prerequisite to be a part of that league is all the kids have to go to that particular school. And so that's how you play, you keep it fair. And so all our kids go to that one school, and we train them, and we provide the resources that we need, and kind of wrap around services, and we play in an elite league. And it's amazing because it's very visible, and all the perks of being an academy and being visible on a big platform. That's and kids pay tuition. So that's what keeps the program running.
So for those that are sort of playing catch up here as well too, traditional high school team might have, an after school practice and one before school practice in a week, right?
Yeah.
What does a typical week look like for the young women in your academy?
So a typical week, so we have morning sessions. So we have, when we start, hopefully in September, we usually have 3 morning sessions per week. And the groups are broken up into 2. So we have a skills. So half the girls are skills with myself. The rest of the girls are with strength and conditioning and movement with Ishmael Chibihi. And then the next day, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that, or Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever day we choose, the girls are switched, are flip flopped. So they all get training and strength and conditioning throughout the week. And they have they go to class. School starts at 9:30 at Kareem Wilson. They go to class. So we train from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and they go to class, and then they have lunchtime shoot around. It's optional. They have lunchtime shoot around, or they can just work on some of the things that I've suggested for them, because each kid has an individual plan. And then we have study hall after school. So it's a 2-hour study hall, and we have tutors. We pay for tutors to be in the study hall. We have an academic advisor that oversees them remotely and prepares all their courses, making sure that they're selecting the right courses. She's working with guidance. So there's a tremendous amount of oversight. The librarian is fantastic, so she helps us. So the girls go from study hall, and then they have practice. So the days are pretty long. The girls pack coolers and coolers of food because they're expending lots of energy. And we go 5 days a week. So the practice is 5 days a week. So that's the difference between a regular high school program that might have 1 or 2 practices, or even a club team that might have 3 practice, or a house league team that might have 1 practice. This is the highest level of practice. This is every day, Monday to Friday. And if we're not playing, Monday to Friday, if we're playing, then we'll have maybe like a little walkthrough on Friday, or if we leave Friday morning, to go to Toronto or Southern Ontario somewhere. It's a full-fledged program. So we mimic like a university program, because we want to prepare our girls for university. And some of them that have left have come back and said, man, I'm over prepared, and they see some of the kids even in the States that they're not even prepared as we are, because we put so much into their bodies, time management. We have so many different things that I can't too much, divulge, but it's some of our trade secrets of preparing these kids and providing wraparound services and oversight and program, individual player plans and it's extensive. And if you can come out of CCA, if you can graduate from our program, you're over prepared. And that's kind of what we want. Like, as we talk about parenting, we want to make sure that once you leave the nest, which is CCA nest, we know you can make good decisions. Your time management is good. Your relationship building, your self-esteem, your accountability, all those things are checked off before you leave. And if you leave without those skills, they can blame us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's amazing, right? And so for those that are listening there, and you're thinking of, oh yeah, I want to go to the next level. Well, there's a perfect example of what the next level looks like, right? If you don't feel like putting in that kind of work, and I only want to practice when I feel good, I don't think the next level's for you, my
friend. No.
So I mean, you hit on so many things there. The obvious thing is this is not a one-person job. Right? You've got tons of people that, putting in hundreds of hours per season with these young ladies here. When you're looking at hiring or bringing someone in to work with the CCA team, what are some of the traits that you're looking for in a candidate to work for you and your brand?
What's funny is we get a lot of emails from people wanting to come on board to the program. They see the success of the program. So it's funny because we don't, I go through these resumes and some of them are really good. But for me, I don't want to bring anyone in who I haven't built a relationship with prior to them requesting to come or sending me their email. So if you sent me your email, I'm like, cool, it's Kyle. I know him. And if I see that you have unique talents, then we can see what happens. But if I don't know you from Adam, I'm going to be that parent to say, do I want to expose this person to my children? I gotta vet this person. I gotta find out who they are, what their history is, and a resume doesn't usually do that justice. I want to see what type of people they are, how they, interact with people, and so anyone who has come into Capital Courts, I have a prior relationship with them, and I've kind of know who they are. I know any shortcomings that they've had. And so it's a little bit different for me and that's why we try to keep it kind of like a family atmosphere where, we're here for you, and you're not going to always like what we're going to say, but we're not going to lie to you, because we want you to leave our program extremely equipped. So when we get these resumes in, I'll forward it to Fabian, the head coach and co-founder of CCA, is, do you know this person? And I don't know this person, or I think I saw her coach, or, is she a yeller, a screamer, or, irate, and she, abusive, or what? Yeah, no, we're good. Because we don't want to bring in anyone who is going to buck the program and going to have a hard time relating to the kids. You know what I mean? So we want to make sure we bring in people who we know can relate with the kids, and who we want to expose our sons and daughters to. Because right now, I've inherited 12 new daughters, basically. And these are my daughters until they move on. And then we'll bring another couple of daughters in. So I want to treat these kids like my own. So anything that I'll do for my daughter, I would do for these kids. And so it's a lot of sacrifice. And I want to make sure that anyone who's speaking to my daughters has been vetted, has been, passed the smell tests, and we want to make sure that they are positive role models, because you never know, and people get frustrated sometimes. Everyone has bad days, but it never should impact how you coach or train these kids.
Yeah, amazing. And that's exactly what parents are looking for, right? So they keep your eyes open for Haley and Harper in another year or so there. We'll see if they're coming through CCA. I mean, you've now had, this is year 3 of the program, correct? Or
Yeah,
so
so we just
3 years.
Yeah, we just finished. 2017 we started, so
Okay.
we just finished year 3.
Yeah, and as you've already alluded to, you've had quite a bit of success already. You've had some players who have now graduated who have not only gone on to play at the U Sport level, but the NCAA Div 1 and at some pretty prominent universities in Div 1 as well too. When you're looking at that type of really high level athlete, is there anything, whether it's a trait or a characteristic or just some way that they sort of comport themselves there off the court, is there a common thread that you can sort of identify that she's got it, she's going places?
Absolutely. There's a common trait that we see, and it boils down to extreme focus.
Mm-hmm.
When athletes can hyper focus on their training, on their academics, it's those two things. If you can focus on your training, academics, usually everything starts to take shape in terms of their ultimate goal. They have a goal, and then they're controlling their academics, which is time management. It's all about those things. They focus on their training, which is all about rest, recovery, and relaxation. And they focus on those two things, and they're able to kind of compartmentalize and focus on the task at hand at all times. Their hair down, and they'll hang out with a couple friends, but it's bang, back in the laboratory, back on my grind academically. And so when we see those two things, kids who are really focused on their academics and really focused on their sports, it's crazy. The kids that want to have fun or more fun, or they feel that they're missing out of fun, are the kids that don't usually end up at the highest level. Mm-hmm. So the kids that, you can be extremely talented, but you just want to have some fun. I had a kid that I used to train, and he was making Team Ontario, and he was crazy athlete. But he texted me and he was in training camp for Team Ontario, and texted me and said, "Hey, some of my teammates are gonna, some of my buddies from Ottawa are driving up to Carabana, and I want to go to Carabana with them." While he's in training in the hotel. Mm-hmm. So I said, "If you go with your friends to Carabana, don't call me no more, ever again." So, and coincidentally, he got into drugs and never played basketball again, because he wasn't able to focus on the task at hand, and he felt that he was missing out. So this FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And he had that disease. And that's what I find a lot of kids fall into that trap. And let me rephrase that. It's not a trap. They kind of fall prey to that, because it's like my friends, all my other friends, my non-basketball friends are, or kids who don't have that high level of those aspirations, they fall prey to that. Some of them are just good enough to still play youth sports, but then some are so talented and so focused that NCAA Division I high level is the only option for them, because that's what's coming towards them. They're being recruited by those universities, because those universities see their work ethic and their focus and their growth. And so, that's not the ultimate goal for everyone. Some kids say, you know what, I want to play college ball, or I want to play youth sport basketball. And their work ethic usually reflects that. You know what I mean? So, but, again, could I have played university at D1? Probably, but I started so late, and I started to focus so late, where, in my latter years in university, that's when I really start to buckle up and start to watch what I eat and watch how I sleep, and, cut back on a lot of different things and compartmentalize. And I ended up doing it long enough to play overseas. So if I would have had the program like CCA in high school, who knows? Who knows where I would have been right now? So I just find the kids that are hyper focused have the God-given ability, the gift to be 6'2" and a guard, or let's say that, as a female athlete, female basketball player, that's pretty tall. So they have to have that special, physical gift, speed, height, all those different things that you just blessed with, coupled with the focus, you will get to NCAA D1. If you don't have, like, say you're a shorter guard, and, or you're a shorter two guard, and, you're still really good and your academics are good, then youth sports is probably kind of where you're going to fit in. You're going to get in where you fit in. Yeah. But even if you're fitting in youth sports, at the youth sports level, you want to excel where you're at. So again, if you're super focused, you won't just step onto a youth sport campus and ride the bench for a couple of years. You may play major minutes because of the work ethic that you developed in a program like CCA or something like that. So we're still preparing you for wherever you want to go, or wherever your skills take you. And we want to make sure that you excel wherever you are. Not just like, yeah, you went to CCA, you paid some money, and you still ended up at youth sports. Yeah, you end up at youth sports, but you're starting your first year. Yeah. Rather than starting your fourth year or your fifth year, because you had to take all that time to develop yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true, right? Yeah, for anyone who's watching The Last Dance right now, if you think that MJ was not a laser focused competitor there, I don't know what you're watching. And so it's refreshing to hear that that's trickling down to the grassroots and youth level.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right, so we've got one last question here. So we've covered a lot in this interview, and thanks so much for your time. But looking back on it all, so player, trainer, entrepreneur, you've run quite a gamut here. Is there any one area that maybe sticks out as particularly rewarding, or do you look fondly on all of them equally?
I mean, how I kind of got into this, what I'm into now, was more of an evolution. So it just kept on evolving into more. So it started off with just coaching my son on his house league team, which is pretty much the lowest of the totem pole in terms of basketball development. You're just working with 7-year-olds once a week in practice for an hour, and then a game for another hour on Saturdays. That's the lowest level. Then it moved up into competitive. I started coaching him in competitive, and now we got twice a week, plus games. And then we moved to training. So every stage of my career, from player to coach to trainer to to director of an academy, they're all sequential. I didn't try to jump and leapfrog over, go from high school coach, or go from a house league coach to entrepreneur, running an academy. I missed a whole level of development here, a whole series of benchmarks that you can, that I can look back and say, man, that was a benchmark, that was a benchmark. So I can't single out one aspect of my career because they're all interconnected and they're all interdependent. So without me getting, learning how to coach kids, 7-year-olds with zero attention span, I wouldn't be able to have them in a competitive setting and succeed. I wouldn't be able to train kids or understand kids in a one-on-one setting, and I wouldn't be able to help kids in an academy setting. So I can't pick one specific part of what I do um, over the other, because they're all interdependent, all interconnected, and I can't have one without the other. I can't just say, I'm just going to start a prep school, because I could, but I'll make so many more mistakes. And, I'll end up shooting myself in the foot because I've leapfrogged. Or if I have too many things on the go and I have no oversight because I didn't laser focus on this one thing. And that's kind of what I tell kids: laser focus on one thing and kill it. Just kill it. And once you've understood it, you know all the ins and outs of it, then you can teach someone else to run it. And then you expand. Boom, 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 expand. So you're always expanding. And as you were talking about my staffing, if I can do all things in my academy, but why would I want to do that? I don't have the time, and I'm going to water it down, and I'm going to miss a bunch of things. Or I can get incredible, hyper-focused professionals and experts at what they do, and have them do their piece, and we all come together as a unit. We're talking to each other on a regular basis, and then the kids win. So that's my main thing is, you want to make sure that all aspects of what you do, you master each stage before moving on to the next stage. Because if you leapfrog it, as you see when people hit the lottery and they have all this money without understanding the value, savings and stocks and bonds and investments, you've skipped all of that. And now you have all this money, and then all of a sudden you're broke again because you skipped a bunch of steps. So Bill Gates won't lose all his money because he understands money, because he's taken his lumps all along the way. So I've taken a lot of lumps. I've made a lot of mistakes, and hopefully no one really got hurt too bad. But I've learned from all those stages how to do what I do more efficiently, and I minimize my mistakes because I didn't go from 0 to 100. I went, 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and all incremental. And along the way, you bump into you get into some roadblocks, and you're like, I learned how to do this when I was in my first stage. I can go around that obstacle. And then the next one. So you're always going around these obstacles that are thrown at you, because as sure as the sun's going to rise tomorrow, you're going to have adversity. But your experience is what's going to carry you forward. But if you leapfrog or you miss a couple steps and now you're doing this, you're always chasing your tail. You're like, what the heck? I don't know where that came from. But if you went a little slower and learned your craft, then you're good to go.
Yeah, amazing. So where can people find you? Where can people get more information about CCA or Capital Courts, or where should they go?
Yeah, so each kind of stream that I have has their own website. Capitalcourts.com is the training center. That's where I am now. And then capitalcourtsacademy.com is the academy. There's links on both sites to each other, but that's where you can find me. And I'm not hard to find. You can just type in Merrick Palmer and something will come up. Probably Capital Courts will come up, and my website is there, and contact me is right there, and all the info at capitalcourts.com, that comes right to me, and I see it on my phone instantly, and I don't hide where I'm at. Everyone knows where I'm at. I'm either at home or at the gym or at Kareem Wilson.
Yeah.
I'm not a hard guy to find. I'm always accessible to as many people as I can, because again, we talk about relationships, and I want to be there for kids that, you know what, I just have a question about A, B, or C. You know, you can find us on Instagram, Capital Courts Academy. You can just, you know, I respond to both, I manage both. And so, you know, I'm always trying to, you know, be accessible, and I'm super down to earth, and, you know, I will share my story like I'm sharing it with you, with anyone. I'm not hiding any secrets. Um, I will show you if I can point you in the right direction. If I don't know, I might know someone who knows. So I'll always try to point you in the right direction. If I can help you myself, I'll try to help you. But for the most part, it's all about building that tribe, so to speak, and lifting up that tribe so they can create their own tribes and be a part. So it's all interconnected. Like I said, Coach K said it's all about people. I might get that tattoo somewhere. I don't know.
Beautiful. What a great way to start it with Coach K, and you know we end with a Coach K philosophy
Absolutely.
too. So awesome! Thank you so much for taking the time. All the best, Merrick.
Oh, no problem, man. My pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks very much for listening, guys. Really hope you enjoyed that. Great to hear tips and tricks and some really valuable insights from Merrick, who has definitely got a lot of wisdom to pass along there. And if there's one thing anyone can take away from that interview, it's the importance of relationships in your life, and really using them to use it as a launch pad for everything that you do. So if you enjoyed this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, pass it along to friends and family, and tune in later this week when we release episode 2. Thanks for listening.